welcome back to Novel Idea. My name is Dia and I didn't post a Friday Reads this last week. Some things came up right about the time that I would have started filming and it just got away from me, and I honestly didn't feel like it over the weekend, but I have a lot of books that I have been reading and I just don't want to leave them till the very end of the month. So I'm going to go over the books that I have finished since I would have posted on Friday, and the ones that I have finished after. So anyway, hi. I am going to just go ahead and dive in and get started because I have quite a few that I have finished. So the first book is The Lost Spells. This is by Robert Macfarland and is illustrated by Jackie Morris. Jackie Morris's illustrations in here are what make this book, because the book itself it's wonderful that it's put together, and it's wonderful that it has some words, but the words are really there to accompany the pictures. And the artwork is just, it's breathtaking. It's just so gorgeous. And so they really are there just to accompany. I enjoyed it very much. Then I read Zora Neale Hurston's Magnolia Flower. It's already back at the library, so I'll just put a picture up. Magnolia Flower is the story of slavery in several different forms. It is about being prejudiced in several different ways also. The story opens with a slave escaping and running away to an island. It's an uninhabited island and he likes it that way. However, there is a Native American woman who is also escaping from the American government because she does not want to walk the Trail of Tears. She does not want to be moved off of the land that she has always known. So she also escapes and ends up on the island. They end up falling in love, and the story unfolds from there. Now, you wouldn't think that there would be prejudice that could happen in that situation, but then we have our own ways of thinking about things, and this story addresses that. So it was a wonderful story. I love Zora Neale Hurston. I doubt that I could ever find much wrong with her writing or with her stories. So this was an A for me. I just loved it. It was a 96%, and I just wish it would have been a little longer. Then I read The Emperor's Soul. This is a very short novella by Brandon Sanderson. It is about a magic that gives things a soul in a way that allows them to be even more so what they could be, depending on who is wielding the soul magic. So as the title suggests, the emperor of this kingdom has had an assassination attempt, and it's basically left him a vegetable, for no better words than that. And they kidnap, the court kidnaps a soul magic girl that is supposed to imprint this emperor with a new soul so that he can continue to be on the throne and the kingdom doesn't get thrown into upheaval because they didn't have an heir. So anyway, I loved this story. It was very fast-paced, and yet Brandon Sanderson manages to somehow develop characters develop a magic system that you can understand and make you really root for certain ones of those characters. I don't know how he does this. They feel very natural in the way that he does his stories. So Emperor's Soul, also a strong A. I gave this a 97% and I really enjoyed it. So thank you to Patrick, who is the one that turned me on to this book to begin with. I really enjoyed it, Patrick. And then I read Gabrielle Roy's The Tortoiseshell and the Pekingese. And this is just a short little book. It's not very long, and it is about a Pekingese dog whose name is Mei Ling and a tortoiseshell cat whose name is Lola, who absolutely hate each other. They don't get along, they constantly bicker, they constantly fight and get sent to separate rooms, and they just have nothing, they don't want to have anything to do with one another. Then Lola has a litter of kittens. Mei Ling has never experienced motherhood, and they suddenly have a focus outside of themselves to focus on, and they just become friends and they raise these kittens together. It's just a really beautiful story of friendship and overcoming. It's just lovely. So Gabrielle Roy, Tortoiseshell and the Pekingese. This was a strong A again, and so this was a 94% for me. And then I read L.M. Montgomery's Magic for Marigold. This is the story of a very strong, very large family who inhabit pretty much an entire island, but especially this one particular town and its kind of surrounding farmland. And they have not had a young child in their immediate family circle in quite a while. And then this little baby girl comes along. Her father passes away and her mother gets very ill, and the entire family takes on trying to name this little girl. And there is a new doctor in town who happens to be a female. The little girl also becomes, or the baby also becomes very ill. And the female doctor is the one who saves her. She also ends up joining the family, and the little girl ends up being named after her. And it's the story of this little girl growing up in a very nurturing, in a very stuck in their ways kind of family that want the best for her, but they're kind of suffocating also. And just how she grows up and what she thinks about herself and about the world around her. And she finds a lot of just everyday kind of magic, and that's what the story is basically about. So it was very sweet. I can understand why it didn't make itself more known in the world the way that the Anne books did, because this one just doesn't quite go far enough. I think that if we would have spent a little bit more time with Marigold and a little less time with the extended family, that it would have been easier to have more of a connection with her by the end of the book. But nonetheless, this was an A- read for me. So this was a 92%, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Then I read a book that I don't have with me because it's back at the library also. And It is called The Wild Hunt. I cannot remember who wrote it, so I'm going to put a picture up. But this was a story about a Scottish island, very northern, and it is about one particular family on the island, and the island every year has a bunch of crows that come to nest, and everybody just kind of stays away from them, keeps their children indoors, because everybody thinks that these crows are there to kind of snatch away their children. This is very modern day. It's right after World War II. It's a modern day kind of story. One of the patriarchs of the island dies, and they think that it's because of these crows, and they think that his spirit basically has been captured by the crows, and other people on the island begin to die also. And one of the girls on the island seems to be very sensitive to spiritual happenings. And so she takes it on herself to figure out exactly what is going on. Even in the midst of a bunch of other things that are hardship for her that are going on, she tries to find out for these islanders what is happening and how to make it better so that they don't feel like they have to give up their home and leave because they want their children safe and they want other things to not happen. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it overall. I think that there were little things about it that I probably could have changed, but I gave this an A- also. This was a 90% for me. And again, it's The Wild Hunt, and the picture will be over here so that you can see who it is by. Then I read A Prayer for the Crown Shy is the second book in the Monk and Robot duology by Becky Chambers. And I read A Psalm for the Wild Built, the first book, a couple months ago, and I liked it. I felt like it was very sweet. It's a very heartwarming book. It's very easy to read, and for a science fiction, which is what this is considered, it's very digestible. And so in the first book, in Psalm for the Wild Built, you meet a monk whose name is Dex, and they want to know more about the world. They've heard of these things called crickets, but they've never heard a cricket. They don't know anything about crickets. They just, they're curious about the world, and they know that there's more out there, even though they have everything that they need, even though they have no complaints about life. They just want to know what else is out there, what else is available. Also, to just be able to talk to people that they haven't known their whole life. And so they, with the blessing of their orders, set out to go serve tea to whoever they meet. And then there is a little bit of a hiccup with his cart, and he meets up with Moscap the robot. And Moscap also has questions, and the questions that Moscap has are very compatible with the questions that Dex has. And so friend Dex and Moscap set off together. And that is kind of where we leave in Psalm for the Wild Built. They are going around and they are asking questions and they are finding things out together. But when I went to pick up A Prayer for the Crown Shy, it was not grabbing me right away. But I made myself sit down and really turn the pages in this because I had been told by some YouTubers that I respect that this was really going to make the duology worth it. And they were completely right. So this one deals much more with the friendship itself, the relationship itself, and how it builds and how they become so easy with one another that they end up not needing to always speak in order to understand what the other one needs. They don't have to ask further questions. They just trust that when the other one is ready to say something, they will. And they're willing to wait, and they are willing to not have all the answers. And it brings such a strength to them individually because this friendship is so foundational for both of them. I don't know how else to say it. It was just beautiful. It was just a fabulous book. So this wasn't an A+ read for me. I gave this a 98%, and I can't say enough about you guys really need to make sure if you read A Psalm for the Wild-Built that you don't stop there. Please pick up A Prayer for the Crown Shy too. Then I read this book. This was recommended by Camilla at Hasty Reads, and this is the story of the seagull and the cat who taught her to fly. And that is exactly what it is. So Cat is rescued as a kitten, and he is given a very loving home. And he knows absolutely nothing else in life except for being cared for, being loved, being warm, having friends, and he doesn't look down on any of the other cats that don't have the same kind of house that he has, and he's just had a very good example in his life. And so when a seagull who has been in an oil slick and knows that she's going to die makes a last-ditch effort and lays an egg, she extracts from the cat who is on the roof when all of this is happening. She extracts promises from the cat that 1, he will not eat the egg, that 2, he will keep the egg with him and keep it warm and watch over it, and then 3, once it hatches, that he will teach her hatchling how to fly. And Cat doesn't know what to do, so Cat enlists the help of many other cats. And it's just such a wonderful story. It was very sweet, very heartwarming also. And this one also was an A read. This was a 95% for me. All right, and then I read The Stone of Farewell by Tad Williams. Also already back at the library, so we'll put a picture up. And this is book 2 in the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series. I did not enjoy this book quite as much. This one was a little harder for me. Not that it was, less lovely to read. It was still a fabulous story. It's just that it was not quite the intensive relational book that the first one was. And so I'm looking forward to the third one because I want to know what happens. But this one in particular, I gave an A-. I gave it at a 92%. And the quest aspect of this one and the battles that happened just left me wanting a little bit in the relationship department. Then I read, which I reread every year right around this time because it's when the book starts, and that is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline. This is the only one of the Time series that I reread regularly. Excuse me. The story of loss, of love, of loyalty story. This is a middle grade book. I would say upper middle grade, like maybe 11 years old. Meg herself, I think in this book is like 14. I connect really well with Meg and identify with much of what she goes through, how she feels, all of that. So that's what kept me coming back for a few years, but now it's much more than that because the story has just gotten so much bigger in my heart. This is an A+ read for me. It is every time, and so 98%. Then I read Cold Comfort Farm. This is by Stella Gibbons, and also I gave this one away to Goodwill already, so I'll just put a picture up here. I expected that this was going to be a book very similar to My Family and Other Animals. I'd heard that it was very funny, it was very lighthearted, and it is very funny and it is very lighthearted. It's just not my kind of humor. It's just not quite my kind of story. So this is about an orphan who needs to live with some relatives in order to make her 100 pounds a year that she has inherited go far enough that she doesn't have to work. And so she goes off to live with an estranged set of relatives at Cold Comfort Farm, and much ensues. She immediately decides that she needs to help these people on the farm, which is extended family. So it's her aunt and uncle and the grandmother and cousins and all of that kind of thing. She immediately sets out to civilize them, basically, and to make sure that the farm is prospering and the people are prospering, which sounds like it might be a good thing, but there were so many times that I felt sorry for her relatives and I was so mad at her. And then it flipped and I was so proud of her and so angry with her relatives. And so it was kind of a roller coaster book for me. I ended up liking it well enough. It's not something I would ever want to reread though, which is why I gave it to Goodwill, but it was a B read for me. I gave it an 84%. And like I said, it was funny and it was a good time, but it's just not something I ever want to go back to. I read An Alchemy of Masques and Mirrors by Craddock. So I did it, Leslie. I got it finished. I really, really enjoyed this book. This was a very different kind of fantasy set. It felt like almost like Three Musketeers, but it was like in Spain almost. The names and everything in the book sound very Spanish, even though it's a completely different world from our own. The kind of magic system that is in this is something that I had not ever heard of or read about before, so that was fun. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. Very female empowering without being male trampling. And so I am looking forward to moving on to book 2. So that was An Alchemy of Masques and Mirrors by Curtis Craddock, and this was a strong A for me. So this was a 97%. And then I read a book called Councilor. It's the second book. The first book was called Isolate, or Isolate, but it's actually Isolate. And it is by Modesitt Jr. Cannot remember the first name, but again, picture will be up. I, again, enjoyed the first book a whole lot. And the second book I liked, didn't love it as much as I liked the first one, but am still looking forward to the third one, which I think is either out or about to come out. So it won't be long and I will be finishing this series. Similar to a world that reminds me kind of Equilibrium, the movie. There is a council, there is a set of people who work for making sure that law and order and all of these things are happening. They have empaths, they have isolates, and then there's one other kind of person that helps out with the government. Isolates can keep empaths from feeling them being there. Empaths can feel people's emotions and kind of judge whether they're lying, whether they're telling the truth, whether they believe that they are telling the truth, and just different things like that. So it's a very political kind of fantasy story. I enjoyed it. I still gave it an A-. It was a 92%. I'm looking forward to book 3. Then I read The Canadian Geese Quilt. And this is a book that I actually showed in my book haul. I had just barely picked this up. And I read this because it was going to be very fast. I knew that. And I, last weekend, was not in a mood for much more than that, with just everything that went about happening. So this is the story of this little girl, and she has been raised in a family where she is an only child, and she has her mother, her father, and her grandmother that live on this farm with her. She finds out that her mom is going to be having a baby, and then her grandmother unexpectedly has a stroke. Grandma survives and needs rehabilitation, but she's different than what, let me see if I can find her name, Ariel, than what Ariel is used to. And so Ariel has to find kind of a new ground there as well. And they together, in order to help Grandma rehabilitate after the stroke, they make a quilt. And it's a quilt for the new baby. One day, when Ariel just can't take being inside any longer and working on this quilt, which she's not very good at, she runs outside and she just wants to run and run and run. And then she sees the Canadian geese coming over the hills, and she knows that autumn is almost over, that winter is on its way, and there is something that just kind of breaks free inside her. And she goes in and she draws a picture of geese flying, and she shows it to her grandma, and she explains kind of what happened when she saw the geese. And her grandma, unbeknownst to her, makes her a Canadian geese quilt from her drawing. and she gives it to her the day that her baby brother is coming home from the hospital. And so anyway, it was just a very sweet, endearing, heartwarming story. And these are the kind of books that I like reading this time of year. I loved this book. It was so good. And so, this was an A. It was just a strong A, 95%. Then I had one DNF, and that is The Lady and the Unicorn by Tracy Chevalier. So I was supposed to read this with Kelly from Kelly Reads a Lot, and we had it all set up, and we were going to start Thursday, and I opened it up Wednesday evening to begin to just kind of peruse to see like how many chapters and how we could break it up and talk to each other and all of that. And I read the first 5 pages of the book, and I was so angry and disgusted. After 5 pages, I thought, wow, if the rest of the book is going to go this way, I am in trouble. I went to look up just kind of reviews, and none of it encouraged me. So I got in contact with Kelly and said, hey, I noticed that this is what is going to be happening, and I looked up some trigger warnings and stuff, and this is what it is, and are you sure you still want to read this? And she said, oh, no, absolutely not. She went and did some research for herself too. And she was like, yeah, it's got a pretty low rating. And so I have a beautiful book that I will never read. I don't know if I'm even going to hang on to it, because I do love it. I do think it's lovely. And I do want to know about these tapestries. I want to read a history, but this is not the history I want to read. So currently I am in the middle of Jen Williams' Poison Song. That's book 3 in the Winnowing Flame trilogy. And I have no idea how this series is going to end. I honestly have zero ideas of how, because there is so much that has happened, and so many things have happened that I never expected, that I'm just like, what the heck? I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm enjoying the journey, and I am liking the books a lot, so I will let you know how that goes. And then I have a cozy mystery that I am reading. I'll go grab it. Here you go. I have new candles burning, and it smells so good in here, you guys. So I picked up this from the library. This is the 4th or 5th book in this mystery setting. And so this is set in Seattle. I don't know if you can see that, but it says Public Market. And so this is at Pike's Place Market in Seattle, which is a place I'm very familiar with, grew up going there. And so this is the spice shop. And these are spice shop mysteries, and the protagonist's name is Pepper, and then there's always Arf, the dog. And who knows what else. I am going to enjoy the rest of my September, but I didn't want to let those books go by and not tell you about them. Thank you for joining me today and for allowing me to just talk to you about what I'm reading and what I have thought about all of it. And I will see you all again very soon.